Those of you here tonight just did the most important thing you can do, which is pay attention and clap. And I truly appreciate that. And those of you that are watching wherever you may be, as Ross said, you can clap with your little fake emoji hands. And you can clap wildly and enthusiastically wherever you are at the time. People will look at you oddly, but you just tell them you are being entertained.
Rosie Nyberg says she's clapping.
There you go. All right. So it is a real pleasure for me to be here tonight, and it is a pleasure for me to be anywhere tonight. Believe me. Since early March, I have largely been home, like so many people, and I'm a traveling, performing. I live here in Tualatin, but I perform. I'm on the road a lot, and I was in Nevada in February and Arizona in March at festivals, and then a thing here in Oregon early March, and then everything got canceled, understandably. And so this is my first live audience since about the second or third week of March, and so I've been really looking forward to being able to see people in the same room, and appreciate those of you watching wherever you are. I live here in Tualatin. My wife and I, we raised our family here for the most part, and we're blessed to live here. And so it's a pleasure for me to be able to support the Historical Society in this way. We are blessed to own horses, made a life that includes horses, and horses did not go uninterrupted. We got evacuated. We live here in Tualatin, but our horses, we rent barn and pasture in Estacada. Yeah, that's right. Estacada has been in the news. And on October 8th, we got a go now evacuation order. Fire was coming it was right there. And so we took our horses and we evacuated them, and then we evacuated them again because the place we took them 17 miles up the road, 2 days later was half a mile from fire. So we took them to Vancouver, Washington, and then just last week, the evacuation order got lifted and we were able to take them back this weekend. And I'm so happy that we got back, and the barn and the pasture and everything is still there. The neighbors not so lucky. Things burned all around there, but our horses are there. But anyway, horses are an important part of our life, and so that poem sort of reflects that. I spend a whole lot more time with our horses than I do other people's cows. That's right. And so with that in mind, and believe me, tongue firmly planted in cheek, I don't call myself a cowboy. Oh, I have friends that say contraire. They say, but Tom, you own horses and you love to ride, and well, just look at the clothes you wear. Yeah, I've got Stetsons and Resistals and boots, a bunch of pair, and a closet full of snappy shirts and Wranglers that I wear. Oh, I know the label in these jeans says they're cowboy cut. On me, that just means to get them on, I gotta suck my gut. And yes, I've heard what the cowgirls say about Wrangler butts, but it's only my dreams that I've ever drove them nuts. No, I say calling me a cowboy just because of what I wear would be like calling you Lady Gaga if you put tinfoil in your hair. Name's a compliment I cherish, but it's going a bit too far, because just knowing where they shop don't make me half the man they are. For to me, cowboy is a name that ought best be reserved for those fitting the job description, for those that are most deserved. Me? I've never owned a cow or made living from a herd, so calling me a cowboy is just a bit absurd. I've never ridden night guard, never helped a calving cow, and I've never settled in a rough stock shoot and said, boys, let her buck. Closest I've come to wrestling with a steer is flipping a big old T-bone while sipping a frosty beer. But I have learned some from vaqueros. I've rode with buckaroos. I've ridden with the wagons for weeks up in the blues. I'm at home up in my saddle and I know my horse is mine. I can guide it with the gentlest touch or just the shift of my behind. And I've got to admit that the loop I throw is better than just fair. I am dang near deadly accurate when roping a patio chair. And I write some cowboy poetry and I like reciting my written verse. Those who hear it don't seem to mind. It could be much worse. I think mostly folks are just thankful I'm not singing cowboy song, because if you've heard me try to sing, well, you know that that's just wrong. So while I don't give myself the moniker, I understand why some folks do. So you want to call me cowboy, I'll leave that up to you. And if you do, I'll consider it an honor to be counted in that crew. I'll just smile and tip my hat and imagine I'm Chris Ledoux. Thank you. So let me ask you, how many clapped because you know the name Chris Ledoux? Yeah. All right, somebody does. Chris Ledoux, and I know some of my friends watching very well know the name Chris Ledoux. The late, great Chris Ledoux is a world champion bareback rodeo cowboy and a Grammy-nominated singer of Western songs. And so we appreciate your memory of Chris. It just means the rest of you clapped because it rhymed. And that works too. So that poem is tongue-in-cheek. I really am okay with being called a cowboy. I have cowboyed, and I cowboy on occasion, helping friends. But I make the distinction. I have never worked as a cowboy, made a living as a cowboy. I've never put cowboy on my tax return, as an occupation. But I have great respect for those who do, who cowboy as a job description, as an occupation. And so that's my little nod to them. But I really am okay with being called a cowboy because I do cowboy. And I've had some wonderful, wonderful experiences cowboying, and look forward to many more. I want to take you out. I want to paint a picture for you. We have saddled the horses in the dark, and we've ridden out, and we are now on the edge of a canyon, looking down into a canyon in our saddles, just as it's barely starting to get light. There's not a lot that's spoken as we sit upon our mounts. The cow boss checking tallies, adding up to remnant counts. He's mighty long on wisdom, but he's pretty short on words when lining out the circles when we're gathering up the herds. They're out there, boys. Go get them. You know what to do. And of course, he's right, and he should know. He handpicked all the crew. He knows there'll be no slacking, that we'll more than earn our pay. And since that's about all that matters, he's not got much more to say. So with just some simple pointing and some nods among the boys, we head in all directions, taking in the morning noise. Now you'd think without us talking, there'd be nothing much to hear. But actually in the silence, there's a lot to hit your ear. Like birds awake and singing, cicadas flicking wings. The aspen trees are quaking and there's bubbling in the springs. Muffled hooves on dewdrop grass, the snap of sun-parched brush. Thermals blowing up steep slopes, Bob White's whistles for they flush. And then the sound we've come for, faint, distant from below. Bawling calves and mamas tell us just where we should go. The silence gives direction, sometimes better than what's planned. And so we leave the talking to the language of the land. Thank you. Thanks. Thank you. So it is time, shameless self-promotion. Language of the Land is the title poem of Language of the Land CD, which came out a year and a half ago. And those of you in the room, I'm going to make available to you. You can get one of these, but Western Way magazine comes out quarterly. It's the quarterly magazine of the International Western Music Association. And they sent me a bunch of these today, and they arrived today. That's providential right there. It has a review of my new book, Reflection. It's a very positive review. You never know. I mean, I had a pretty good hunch that it was going to be positive because it's a real good book. It's a real good book. And Language of the Land, that CD. I've done 3 CDs. The most recent was Language of the Land. It came out a year and a half ago and debuted at #1 on the Western radio charts for the most played cowboy poetry CD. And thank you. And it's #2 now. I mean, a year and a half later. And my friend A.K. Moss, a wonderful poet from southwest Eastern Oregon, is on there, and some other great poets that I'm really pleased to be a part of. So if you're interested in a copy of Western Way, those of you in the room, there's a half a dozen copies up here, and you're welcome to have those. So anyway, that's Language of the Land. And the land, just like that poem says, does speak to us if we listen, right? I'm sure you've all had opportunities to be out and listen to what the land had to tell you. Horses likewise have a language. And if we can clue into that horse's language, we can understand an awful lot about what it's thinking, how it's processing its world. And of course, that horse makes noise. I mean, horses whinny and they nicker and they neigh. But in my experience, my observation, most of a horse's language happens in its body. And that horse's language can be explosive, dramatic, and it can also be just as subtle as the turn of an ear. The bay was first to hear it, with the gray not far behind, the others quickly turning to discover what they'd find across the open pasture, in the shadow of tree line. They're looking for some motion or other kind of sign to tell them if it's danger or if something more benign, something that they've seen before that their memories can align with instinct or behavior when familiar, something known to not be predatory that will leave them all alone. Until then, they are fearful of the sound they can't define across the open pasture in the shadow of tree line. On the edge of fight or flight, they sense something isn't right. So till they know for certain, they will stand with ears upright and eyes and nostrils scanning for some motion or a scent that will tell them in an instant if to run or be content with dropping guard and grazing, knowing everything is fine across the open pasture in the shadow of tree line. Thank you. Thank you. How many people, by show of hands, and either through emoji or here, how many people have a horse or have had or do now own horses? Okay, some. All right. So you know what I'm.
Some people can't find their emoji, so just tell them to use the chat. It's center bottom.
Yeah, center bottom. I'm told that the chat is center bottom, should be on your screen. If you can't find your emoji, just type wild enthusiasm. I don't know what, whatever. Clappity clap, clap, clap.
Eleanor's clapping.
Somebody's clapping. If Eleanor, folks at home, if Eleanor can clap, you can clap. You can figure it out. So, oh, by the way, I did want to mention one other thing. If at any time a fly lands on my head, for gosh sakes, seriously, for gosh sake, would somebody please tell me? Would somebody please tell me before this thing's over with? All right, or run up here and grab one of these Western Way magazines and just. There you go. Whack, whack, whack my hat. Whatever. Okay. Anyway, back to the deadly serious business of cowboy poetry. All right. Good. I don't know. So back to the entertainment portion of tonight's. Rosie Nyberg. All right, there you go. All right. So.
Linda Boatwright and North Walton, she's clapping and laughing.
There you go. See, it's all working. Technology. And tell them the people in the room have never had more fun.
Yeah.
So the question I asked, which some people responded with raise of hands and wild enthusiasm online, is yes, some of you have owned horses, have or now or have owned horses. Those of you who have not had that great privilege, if you were to acquire a horse, you'd most likely buy one. Short of somebody giving you one, it's best to buy one, and as opposed to, like, I don't know, steal one. It's not allowed. But if you were to buy a horse, you'd go to a horse sale, obviously, or you'd go online. Increasingly, you could go online to classified online horse sale sites like dreamhorse.com is one, and you can shop for horses by geography, by age, by size, by color, by sex, by training, by breed, and temperament. That's important. You know, a 1 to 10 scale of temperament of a horse, whether it's cool and calm or explosive. And you'll see horses described in a lot of common sense language, and you'll see some horses described in some vernacular that might not be familiar with. Bomb-proof is one of those words. You might see a horse described as bomb-proof. And a bomb-proof horse can mean two things. Bomb-proof can mean a sturdy, kind of like a tank. It's like, built like a tank. A bomb-proof horse would be a horse that's sturdy, could stand up to a lot of rugged use and abuse in a nice way. A lot of work. But more so, in my experience, bomb-proof refers to the temperament of a horse. A horse that isn't going to get rattled. A bomb could go off and this horse isn't going to freak out, right? A motorcycle could backfire, a truck door could slam, a bunny rabbit could jump out onto the trail, things that really freak horses out. A bomb-proof horse can handle that. And, I have what I consider a bomb-proof mare, a bomb-proof pinto mare. And this next poem I want to share with you isn't about her specifically, but I will tell you that the first few lines, the first couple of, maybe, I don't know, 4 lines or so, the first couple of rhymes in this poem came out of my mouth spontaneously and instantaneously when my bomb-proof pinto mare saw a mailbox that it had not seen before. And if you know horses, you know that a horse, if it sees something that it has not seen before and does not recognize, will immediately assume that it is there to eat them. That's the predator-prey reflex. And so old Lexi, she saw that mailbox at the end of the driveway coming off of the barn property that she had not seen before and took immediate evasive action. But you could just probably tell that I'm a superior rider and I stuck with her. Barely. But the first lines of this poem came out of my mouth just like that, and the rest of it I made up. All right. Just sort of imagining what could go wrong if there was a little misunderstanding or miscommunication in the description of a horse for sale. The horse's new owner lie there staring up at air. Apparently, he'd underestimated the bomb-proof pinto mare. He'd barely stepped the stirrup and settled up on top when that horse gave one mighty buck and launched him to a flop. But now she's standing gentle, just as docile as could be, matching a dream horse description. Temperament 3. Bomb-proof, there's a word you've heard before, of course, to describe a ride by anyone unflappable horse. So this is a puzzling situation that he needed to work out, because bomb-proof's not a word that should leave any doubt about the nature of a horse's disposition, but doubts what he had there in his supine position. So like any good horseman who's been put to the test, he got up quick to get back on to prove it was the best. For you go falling off a horse, the next thing to be done is get back on that critter, for the dang thing thinks it's won. Oh, it won't do your ego bad to prove you can still ride, and even if not pretty, you'll at least hang on to pride. So he dusted himself off best as could be, swung on up and glued his pockets to the tree. This time he'd be ready so he'd not get caught off guard. But that mare just exploded, and he was back on the ground hard. with the only thing remembered before he finally lost the handle is that somewhere in mid-wreck, his head bounced off the cantle. This horse is bomb-proof, he thought? Oh, there must have been some mistake. So he called the man who'd sold her to ask him for his take on what exactly did he mean when he called her by that name. What must he have been thinking when he said that horse was tame? Bomb-proof, the man replied. Oh, I never used that word when I described that horse to you. Well, that would be absurd. That there mare's a pistol, rank in every way. I was honest in laying it out for you, mindful what to say. Didn't seem to bother you none. You seem to know your stuff. Of course, I didn't mind. You couldn't pay me fast enough. I will say, though, I thought yours an odd way to decide. Because generally, when buying a saddle horse, folks check out the ride, but you just loaded her in your trailer and down the road you fled. And, well, I remember wondering if you'd heard a word I'd said. Well, now I know you heard some words, but you got at least one wrong. Because I didn't say bomb-proof, friend. What I said was time bomb. Thank you. So I have benefited greatly from association with friends through cowboying, through performing, through work, family, whatever. And I'm sure all of you too have had the experience to learn from some good people and be inspired by some good people. I want to share some thoughts that I wrote about one particular person at a time when he was going through a real rough patch. Cowboy and a paint horse, pretty darn good part. He's been there, seen it, done it through times both good and hard. He's been at it for some time, a good long stretch of years, rounding up calves and mamas and turning bulls to steers. He's worked in some big outfits, been bossing one or two, and taught a lot of other hands a bunch of what he knew. And man, have we learned plenty about punching and much more. Getting advice a wise man be best to not ignore. Taught us what it means to be a worthy friend and hand about love and work and honor and how to treat the land. He told us, don't just do a job, you give it all you got. You only go around one time. Life's with your best shot. He showed us the importance of keeping our word true, that if you make a promise, do what you say you'll do. And we watched him facing hardship with determination. And no matter the outcome, show appreciation for those that stand by you, that come alongside, ride with you through the humps and cheer you through the ride. One to ride the river with. That's his reputation. The kind you can depend on in that situation. I've had the good fortune of knowing good men, the kind you can look up to and hope to see again, not just for their achievements, although they're worth remark, but for how they live their lives, how they give a spark, kindling those around them to glow and grow and give, make the world a better place and show us how to live. I ask you, Lord, for more friends like the one thought of now. Give me more just like him, Lord, and please, if you'll allow, a lot more years for my friend so he can show us more what it means to live with grace before the other shore. That's to the memory of my friend, a great cowboy, Trey Allen. Thank you. Thank you. So, not all cowboys are boys. Not all cowboys are boys. In fact, there once was a cowgirl from Nantucket who climbed on a bull and said, "Buck it." She was dead set on 8 when they swung open the gate, but that bull had a different agenda that was aimed at getting her upended. So it didn't take long for her plan to wind. Barely $2 in, she's $3 behind. That big bull was laying hurt, slinging a snot and kicking up dirt. But say what you will, no cowgirl or guy has ever shown more guts or try. Which just made that bull perturbed. Actually, more like disturbed. He dipped to the left, spun to the right, all the time bucking, bringing the fight, then a duck and a dive and a big belly roll. That big bucker was out of control. Well, the Cowboy's watching, all brace for the wreck. They're yelling, "Jump, girl, or you're dead as heck." Well, she just looks up, flashes a grin, and she says, "Don't worry, boys, I'm just breaking him in." And with that, she buries her spurs in hide, centers up, and hangs on for more ride, which made that bull, being nothing but rank, ramp up trying to buck off its flank. He sucked left with a sweep and fade, and those Cowboys thought sure that girl was made. But she cowboyed up, got back in position, continued to ride, still set on her mission, determined to do all it'd take to gut the ride out and make the full 8. Well, that cowgirl was taking a licking. But you know, the whole time she's riding, that clock's a ticking. And with the seconds about 6.4, they saw something not seen before. She's fanning her hat and chopping spur, and well, that big bull settled, just started to purr. With a hoot and a holler, she looked around, swung her leg over, and jumped to the ground. Not a half tick later, that whistle blew 8, and that uncovered bull returned to the gate. "Well, boys," she said, "that there was fun. That was a bucking son of a gun." "But why'd you jump off?" they wanted to know. "You had him beat, girl. You'd put on a show." "Ah, you're right, boys," she said. "I could have finished the ride, but I got to thinking, I might bruise your pride. What with rough stock being a manly sport, not at all suited to us weaker sort. It's the women who ride." Thanks. Thank you. So I'm gonna stick with this. It's a beautiful. This is an amazing segue. You're not going to believe this, but I'm gonna stick with the subject of women because for a number of years, quite a few years until just recently, I was had a volunteer role, small volunteer role with the Department of Corrections, specifically a little volunteer role at Coffee Creek, the women's prison just up the road in Wilsonville. And on one, which is Oregon's, which is, as you know, in this room, and if you don't know, that's Oregon's women's prison. About 1,200 women, more or less, incarcerated there. And on one occasion, I was visiting with 4 inmates. Those 4 inmates represented about 24 inmates out of that total population that had the privilege of meeting once a week with volunteer quilting instructors. And they were talking about how they appreciated that program and what they had learned. And they certainly learned quilting, right? They learned the skill and the art, craft of sewing and quilting. But what really struck me is when they were talking about life skills, they learned what it means to be organized, to make a plan, to use their time wisely, to be creative, to, if they made a mistake, to not give up and quit, but to figure out a solution and see it through and ultimately be successful. And things a lot of us take for granted, but they were learning these things. Most of them, as I understood them talking, they were learning that really for the first time in many cases. And they learned what it meant to give. The Coffee Creek Correctional Facility has relationships with hospice programs and children's hospitals. And when the women complete a quilt, and they make 3 quilts during their time in that program, and it takes a long time. They work an hour a week. Might take a year, might take more than a year to finish a quilt. And the first 2 of those quilts are automatically given out to the community through those hospice programs and children's hospitals. And the 3rd quilt, the women can do with what they will. And almost without exception, what I heard them say is they gave that one away too. And one woman in particular struck me when she said, "I've learned what to give. This program taught me what it means to give." And she says, "I want to be a giver, not a taker anymore." So it could be argued whether or not this is a cowboy poem. But I want you to know that a cowboy poem is any poem a cowboy wants to do. So tonight, this is a Cowboy poem for our friends up the road, the inmate quilters at Coffee Creek. So you want to be a giver, not a taker anymore. And you're committed to spend the time to tackle that big chore. You're making the changes you know you need to make to get your life together. No more hearts you want to break, including yours, because you know the trail that you've been on is one that leads to nowhere, except all kinds of wrong. Well, it's the one that brought you to the place you are right now. But you've been shown a better path, and you'll get on it somehow. No, it won't be easy. There's no quick shortcut. It's going to take full effort of your brains, your heart, and your gut, and support from good people to help you make it through and show you how to navigate the troubles you'll come to. But you get on that good new road and your future will unroll. You'll see the bright horizon even from the darkest hole. You start by picking pieces of your life up off the floor and putting them back together, but better than before. Kind of like a quilter taking scraps and spools of thread and creating a thing to replace a child's bed. Or making a treasure of memories for an old man's final days, stitching quilts, bringing comfort, so many lives and ways. Those little squares of yellow, they're from a worn out skirt. And that patch of blue that forms the sky is from an old work shirt. But it doesn't really matter where they're from or what they've all been through. It's how they're put together now to form something clean and new. So you want to be a giver, not a taker anymore? Grab some thread and pick your pieces off the floor. Thank you. Thank you. So I mentioned earlier the opportunity I've had to know some really good people. And that has also led to the sometimes inevitable saying goodbye to people. Just a quiet conversation between friends as they both sat settled looking out upon the cattle on the flat. About things that don't get talked about near often as they should amongst friends who've rode together for years through scarce and good. I'm sure they'd done a lot of talking about what subjects then at hand, about the herds, and markets, and issues with the land. They talked about the need for rain, spent hours in idle chatter, solve the world's big problems and some that don't much matter. But today some words were spoken that they'd never before shared, at least to one another. For now their hearts are bared. For the trail for one was in just weeks or maybe days. Is till then getting closer, put both men in a haze. Making words come not so easy, hard to know just what to say, but still some things need saying, and this would be the day. It started with, I'll not forget all the kindness that you've shown. You've been quite the friend to me, I'd say the best I've known. With a solemn silence broken, these cowboys' talk turned deep to truths they'd always treasure and promises to keep. A promise to keep forever his memory close at hand, to finish things he'd started and live the dreams he'd planned. A promise to rarely dwell on low and lean times of the past, but rather focus forward to pastures green and grassed. The words that were shared that morning were heartfelt and came with tears, conveying things not spoken for way too many years. Lord, it's hard to bid your farewell to a pard who'll soon be gone, stepping beyond the daylight to no more ride the dawn. There was quiet contemplation between friends as they sat, the last time looking out upon the cattle on the flat. It's the friendship. Thank you. So I'm sure those of you who are keeping notes and those of you at home keeping notes know that the second poem I did tonight made reference to my incredible roping ability. What did I say? I was dang near deadly accurate when roping a patio chair. But the fact is, I actually can rope. And I'm not the greatest roper, but I actually can throw a loop, and I know some different shots, appropriate for certain situations. I can sneak up on something and throw a hula hand. I can manage a figure eight, sometimes on purpose. Those who are familiar with my roping would be the first to tell you that my very, very best roping happens in my imagination, which is where this takes place. All right. I have gone and roped a llama way high up on its neck. So there's like 18-inch of flexing muscle giving me pure heck. The thing is spitting, kicking, sure-footed, feet a flying, making me wish I instead looped a rabid mountain lion. Yeah, I have gone and roped a llama, hula hand, a camelid. Not by far the brightest thing I can say I ever did. Because when this tale gets passed on, and you know darn well it will, it'll be all about my target, not about my roping skill. Sidebar. Why, when spelling llama, are there two and not one L? One is silent, so not needed. Just the same as the word hello, I'm in big trouble. Despite my prayers and hoping, when my wife finds out her yarn supply is what I've been out roping. Yeah, roping mama's llama, that'll put her in a stew. Something I should have thought about before my catch twine flew. She'll question if I've got a brain. Make for certain I regret lofting that one swing flip shot at the critter she calls a pet. Or she'll make a list of honeydews, ask big favors for amends. How long she keeps demanding them, well, I guess that all depends on if I can act real humble and show some true remorse. And I don't suppose it'd hurt none if I bought her a new horse. Thank you. Thank you. Well, I have had fun tonight, and I hope you have too. And I'm hoping that later, if I get a chance to look at those of you wildly clapping and an emoji.
Every round, I got tired.
They're clapping.
Laughing.
Right.
It's all there.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Maybe you could remind them to start asking questions, and you get to those.
Yeah. So I have time. I have time for a couple of more poems. I'm going to share a couple more poems that I had in mind to share tonight, and then I'd be happy to answer questions, those in the room or that have been that are using the chat room until as much time as we have tonight. I'm not sure how much time we'll have, but I'm happy to answer any questions that come my way. And before I do these two poems, I want to do a couple things. First of all, I want to thank again the Tualatin Historical Society for thinking of this evening. And I know it's been a tough year for everybody. It's been a tough year for the Tualatin Historical Society that wasn't able to do their normal, traditionally successful, let's make the budget fundraising event. And so the raffle, I'm going to pull some raffle winners. I appreciate everybody that has participated in the raffle. Hopefully that's been a financial success for you. Those of you that are watching at home, if you didn't have a chance to buy raffle tickets and want to support Tualatin Historical Society, you can find a way to do it. Get on their website and find a way to support either directly or when their next events are able to happen, show up and participate. And with that said, it's my great privilege to draw raffle winners. Yeah, okay. Yeah. And now, yeah, here's the deal. You must be present to win. No, okay. No. Wouldn't that be funny? No, that's not funny at all. So the first one that I'm going to pull out is third prize. That's $100 cash. The second one coming out is second prize. You see a pattern here? $250. And then finally, the grand prize winner of $500. Yeah. And I'm going to assume I'm reaching deep into this. Should I stir them a little bit? All right. Let me, I'm stirring. Yeah. All right. I'm okay. I'll make sure I have one. All right. Ann Ward. Ann Ward. And we have a phone number. So, Ann, if you're not listening, Ann, if you're able to tell me the correct spelling of your name, you are a winner. All right. We will pretend like I didn't breathe on that and hand that to you. All right. I'm digging deep. Wow, I used to work with somebody by this name. Wouldn't that be something? If this was the same person? He passed away a few years ago, so I don't think it is. All right, it probably is not funny, but he was a really good guy. Robert Kellogg. Robert Kellogg, second prize. There you go.
Yeah, he's a city councilor.
Oh, yeah. There you go.
Yeah, the mayor's not happy about that.
Yeah. All right, here we go. I'm digging deep.
This is the big one.
This is deep. Make sure I only have one. All right. I'm going to go Sue Ruxter. Sue.
That's good.
Sweet.
She's a member, longtime member.
Perfect. All right. So.
You want to do questions now?
No, I want to do a couple. I want to close with a couple of poems, and then happy to answer questions. So I mentioned that I'm from Tualatin. My wife and I raised our family here for the most part. We moved here 35 years ago when our kids were just starting elementary school, and we've lived in Oregon prior to that, always in the valley here. But we're Tualatin people, and like I say, I have a appreciation for this community and for what the society has been able to do. Just by point of reference, as I was driving up here, I was reminded. I don't know. Remind me what year this got moved to this site and the renovation happened. 2004. I was a scoutmaster in Tualatin. I was a scoutmaster for many years in Tualatin. And one of our service projects with the scouts and a bunch of dads was pulling the old siding off of this building. So I have splintered myself on this very property. So anyway, but I want to, being a proud Tualatin person and an Oregonian, I want to share a few lines for Oregon from a grateful native son. I have roamed all corners of this state at lope or trot or walking gait from vantage point of horse's back on vast wide range and single track. Smell. This would be a good time to reach for your book. This is Reflection. This is a book. This is crazy. See, I should have we interrupted this program. Pick up your book and tell me what page, a few lines for Oregon. Oh, there it is, page 51. On this.
On your webpage and
Yeah, it's
Historical
a heck of a
Society.
deal. It's available. Oh, you're going to sell some? Yeah, it's available here at the Historical Society, and it's on Oregon Cowboy Poetry. Anyway, I have roamed all corners of this state at lope or trot or walking gait from vantage point of horse's back on vast wide range and single track. Smelled the air of sage scent mesas, followed ruts and ancient traces of nomads, beasts, and those who came to stake their claim and bring my name. Watched desert devils spin and dance, their dust trails haze the far expanse, then fade and lift to leave behind my outlook clear with inspired mind. Cut the tracks of wild Mustang bands, packed deep and cool the timber stands, spent enough time around city walls to know I prefer coyotes' calls. Circled herds on high grazed grasses, trailed them down steep switchback passes. Spent many nights with stars my lamp, bedded in a remote camp. Picked way across rivers snaking down from mountain range and hilltop crown. Seen life they bring to valley floor, then fresh the salt at ocean shore. I've come to love this diverse land where creative fires can be fanned. 6 decades here have made it clear I'm glad my roots were planted here. Oregon is a sacred ground where coiled up thoughts can be unwound, then strung in lines to then be sung with passioned voice and angel's tongue. So now my plan's for me to stay until my final earthly day. If that works out, then I'll be blessed to ride my days out in the West. Thank you. I could end right there if you want. You want me to, I can stop right there if you want to just go right into some questions, or I can do another one.
It's your call. We actually,
Got-
Rosie actually suggested we have a drawing for some books, and I think that's a good idea. We got some, and so.
Let's do that.
Why don't you answer a question?
Yeah,
We'll draw for a book, and then you'll finish with your last poem. How's that?
yeah, or maybe we'll just, yeah.
Here we got a
I see.
question.
What I see one, Lois has one.
We can take them, let's take them from the audience so we know that from the online people, so they know we're listening to them. Linda Boatwright wants to know what propelled you into this wonderful career spinning words. We're so lucky to be a part of hearing you.
How nice, thank you.
Yeah, so Linda, I guess she heard me talking. Maybe you can just briefly rephrase the question. People, I've been contacting people. They say they can hear me talking.
Yeah, okay, so the question, if you didn't, the question was, how did I get started writing poetry? Is that kind of the paraphrase of the question? I got exposed to cowboy poetry. Well, I'm going to back up. I was born into ranching and farming and ranching heritage. My grandparents both farmed and ranched. And so being raised around Western lifestyle, Western music, Western art, Western heritage got me eventually exposed to cowboy poetry. Back in the mid 80s is when I first recall seeing and hearing cowboy poets, Waddy Mitchell and Baxter Black and some others that a lot of people know to this day. And so I became a fan of cowboy poetry. It was just part of the culture to appreciate the spoken word and the history of and the heritage, the oral tradition of these typically rhymed and metered stories or poems. And so I was a fan, appreciating it, buying tickets to go see people like Waddy Mitchell and others. And then to sort of get to like what got me to write a poem was about 10 years ago. 10 years ago, 2 weeks ago was the anniversary of the death of a good friend of mine, a cowboy friend who died unexpectedly. And there was to be a memorial for him, a memorial ride off of his ranch in Molalla. And I I wrote a few lines in memory of him and shared that with his family and friends. And it hasn't hardly been shared since. It was appropriate for that time and place. And that was the first poem I ever wrote. And it was well received. And I guess that gave me permission, based on the reaction that I got from people, that maybe I had something else to write and something else to say. And so I wrote some others and wrote some others and wrote some others, and people started hearing them, and now I'm happy to share them with people who like hearing them. So hope that's yours.
Linda says that's lovely. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions?
Go ahead, probably from our audience there.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yes, Lois.
There's a song. I ride an old page and I
Lead an old Dan.
I'm off to Montana to
Throw a houlihan.
What's a houlihan?
Houlihan. A houlihan is a couple in roping. I mean, a houlihan, sometimes people interpret that song as a houlihan as I'm going to go and raise Cain. I'm going to go throw whatever, a houlihan. But houlihan is the name of a roping shot. It's an over the shoulder, a one flip. Instead of coming up and chasing down something and throwing, trying to get distance and trip, what you typically see in roping. It's this sort of sneak shot. It's a subtle underhand flip over your shoulder. That's in the poem, and in roping, that's a houlihan. Yeah, what the song is referring to might be I'm going to town and raise heck. I don't know, but I think it's the roping. Houlihan is that one swing. It's this one swing flip shot. Okay. Yeah. Any others?
Are there cowboy poetry festivals in Oregon?
Are there cowboy poetry festivals in Oregon? The answer, I would say, would be yes, but they're not as, and there have been some that ran for several years, and I was fortunate to perform in a couple of them. They still happen on occasion. They tend to be smaller. The big, and I'd love to change that. I mean, we had one scheduled for Hood River, 17th, I think, Saturday we had one scheduled for the 17th at the Columbia Center for the Arts with a bunch of folks from the Northwest, some singers and poets. Theaters, just like everything, is shut down, so we won't be able to do that. But they happen on occasion. Most of the bigger ones, the traditional ones, Spirit of the West in Ellensburg is a big one. Happens in the spring, and of course Elko, Elko, Nevada, Sierra Vista. I should have been last week in Durango, Colorado for the 30-something annual or 29th annual or whatever, the Durango Cowboy Poetry and Music Festival or Gathering. Durango, Colorado, Prescott, Arizona, Texas. But Oregon, the opportunities to see cowboy poetry and Western music in Oregon tend to be smaller concerts. If I'll perform or 2 or 3 people performing, but big 3-day festivals, not so much. But if you've got a place you want to, I'll be the first to sign up to buy a ticket. If you,
Are there any purses? I mean, do you actually win money if you win the contest?
Oh, not contest. No, you mean?
Yeah, if you go, you get first place.
No, you get hired. No, no, you get hired. If I go, typically you get hired. I mean, just like if you go to see a bluegrass festival or a rock festival or a folk festival, those performers that are on the headline stages and all that, they're paid. I mean, we're paid entertainers. Right. Open mic stages and other stages and opportunities to do jams and stuff like that or provide a lot of opportunity as well. But no, the people who typically are invited to perform at those on the scheduled featured artist stages are paid. And contests, I've won a couple, but I mean, with the Poet of the Year deal I won was just was not a prize. I mean, it's just an honor. It's not a competition. It's just,
No grocery
no. A couple others, there's some small prizes, but I'm not too much into that. Anyway. Any other questions that anybody has?
One of the people.
Oh, we're gonna.
We draw a winner for a book, and I think that's a great
All
idea.
right.
We can do that.
All right. That's a fine idea. I will tell you, I'll tell you about this book too, as I hold the, yeah. So the book was a byproduct of the pandemic. You know, I started a book, or the idea of getting my poems into book form 4 or 5 years ago, and didn't make much progress on it just because I'm busy and whatever. But being home for months at a time, I thought there's never been a better time to get this thing done. And so I worked on it pretty much full time for about 4 months, hired a really good artist. Elizabeth Zimmerman's an artist in Salem, who I met. I was performing at the St. Paul Rodeo, and she exhibits her art there. And back in 2014, I met her when she won the Best in Show for a watercolor that she did at the juried art show they do there. And and I always thought if I could ever do a book, boy, it should be cool to have her drawings in there. So really happy with that. So that's how the book came to be. And so Bill Avery. Bill Avery. I drove on Avery Street today, twice. I drove on Avery Street. I stopped and tried to buy some eggs, and apparently there were no more eggs at the farm. All right. So I don't necessarily need to do another poem. I'm happy to answer questions. I can do another one if you want. Would you? Freebird, yeah, do Freebird. All right. So again, I thank you for being. I thank you for being here. And somebody would have said something if a fly landed on me, and that didn't happen. So that's all good. All right. Let me do this. So I mentioned that I am born and raised in Oregon. And like I said, lived in Tualatin for 35 years. And before that, I started out in Canby, Oregon. And Canby, Portland, like Oswego here. And so always, always here in the valley, one place or another, but right here on Martin Ozzie Avenue for 35 years, as Miss Lois Martin Ozzie's in the room. Thank you for building that street for me. It makes it so much easier to get to my house. I don't know how we would do it. But anyway, being from Oregon might not have been. My mom was born and raised on a farm in north central Nebraska. And a few years ago, my mom gave me some things that belonged to my grandfather, Elmer Blake, who I did know. And included in that was the farm auction ad announcing the sale of Elmer Blake's farm in Mills, Nebraska. And based on some of the content of that ad, which listed everything for sale, and everything was for sale. Based on some of the content of that ad and some things that I have that were my grandfather's, I'll leave you with this one. Team geldings, 4 and 6. One gray, one black as coal. Team roan mares aged 5 and 6. One comes with a foal. Smooth mouth gelding saddle horse, bay mare and bay roan colt. A sampling of the horses Elmer Blake listed to be sold. 38 head of stock in all listed in detail. As I am moving to Oregon, I will sell at public sale. Calves, yearling steers and heifers, a registered Hereford bull, a dozen good milk cows, 2 fresh, another to soon pull, farm machinery, household goods, chickens and their feed, everything a family might ever want or need. Well, noon, that notice said, the sale get underway, and it even noted lunch on site by Louis Cafe. 2,500 bushels or more of oats, barley, and corn, 16 dozen pullets and hens, Plymouth Rock and White Leghorn, 100 ton of barley hay, red fodder and sorghum cane, back there black amber's the name they gave that grain, sulky, plow and lister, harrow, disc, binder, in-gate seeder, 12-foot rake, a side hitch, sweep, and grinder, plus other machinery listed, used to work the land, horse-drawn gear, every piece. Means Grandpa was a hand. New 3-burner oil stove, the table from the kitchen, with 6 chairs, plus the high chair they used to put my mom in. Rocker, range, radio, dresser, sink, beds, dishes, milk pails, churn, everything you'd think. Well, even on that list for sale was Grandpa's livestock brand. Now, there's something I'd love to have seen or better have in hand. I'd keep it with the arrowheads he gathered on their land, left there by the Ponca, the Pawnee, and the Sioux Lakota band. Speaking of keepsakes and heirlooms from the day, I've got Grandpa's fiddle and bow, but I never heard him play. What I have heard is a treasure that'll never go away. Stories of my heritage and roots, what paved our family's way. The hard work of farming and keeping up with chores, and a month of Sundays sometimes between trips to the stores. See, my roots are dug from Nebraska soil up north on the Dakota line. It's where my mom and aunt and uncles were born and raised until the time Grandpa decided to sell the farm and move the brood out west, take a shipyard job because the war was on. And for that, I am blessed. Because how else would my mom have ever met my dad? Fell in love, married, and had the son they had. I am truly blessed that Grandpa sold the spread and replanted our roots in Oregon, where we would grow instead. Thank you, and thank you at home. Thank you, thank you. Thank you to the Historical Society.
Great compliments from
All right.
the web. Yay. Good night, everybody.
Good night.